Before we start, I want you to picture this: a quiet Cape Cod pond on a hot July afternoon. The water looks green, murky, and still. There's a smell in the air, no fish jumping, no birds diving. This is not what most people picture when they think of Cape Cod. When we hear Cape Cod, we imagine clean beaches, fresh seafood, bike trails, and clear salt water. But today, I'm going to show you the other side of that image: a growing waste and water quality crisis. This problem isn't just about dirty water. It affects wildlife, public health, indigenous cultures, tourism, and local livelihoods. As most know, Cape Cod is known worldwide for its beauty, but most people don't realize that nearly 90% of its fresh water and coastal waters are influenced by pollution. Across the Cape, ponds are turning green, bays that were once clear now host slimy algal growth, rivers and marshes are becoming oxygen-starved. This is happening because Cape Cod is what scientists call a sensitive watershed, mostly sandy soil, meaning water moves quickly through the ground. That sounds good, but it also means pollution travels easily underground and ends up in drinking water and coastal ecosystems. Two major pollutants behind this crisis are nitrogen and phosphorus. These nutrients don't just disappear. They collect in water over time, creating slow-motion environmental damage.
More visitors and more homeowners have brought unchecked pollution to the area, threatening to permanently destroy its beaches and estuaries.
A new report finds that Cape Cod's bays and ponds continue to suffer from water pollution.
Cape Cod's bays and ponds are polluted with excess nutrients.
Decades of pollution continue to threaten both human health and ecosystems.
So where do all these nutrients come from? First, Cape Cod's seasonal population boom. In the summer, the Cape's population nearly triples. That means more water usage, more toilets flushing, more laundry, and more wastewater. Second, road runoff. As traffic increases, rain washes oil, fertilizers, and other chemicals off the roads and into nearby waterways. And third, septic systems. About 85% of homes on the Cape rely on septic systems instead of sewers. Many of these systems were installed decades ago. They were never designed to handle today's population size or pollution levels. When they fail or even age, they leak nitrogen straight into groundwater. Fourth, landscaping and fertilizer. Vacation homes often have heavily fertilized lawns. When it rains, excess chemicals wash into ponds and estuaries. Each source alone might not seem catastrophic, but together they overwhelm Cape Cod's fragile environment. Now let's talk about why nitrogen and phosphorus are such a big deal. These nutrients act like steroids for algae. They cause massive algae blooms, thick green layers that block sunlight and use up oxygen. Some algae releases toxins that irritate skin, cause rashes, sicken pets, and make people ill when swallowed. Children and elderly people are especially vulnerable. When oxygen disappears from the water, fish and shellfish suffocate. Lakes develop dead zones where nothing can live. And it doesn't stop there. Nitrogen moves into drinking water supplies. Long-term exposure is linked to health issues, including risks to infants. So this problem is not just environmental, it's a public health issue too. One of the most important areas of progress is the reform of residential septic systems, because septic pollution is the single largest source of excess nitrogen on Cape Cod. Right now, most homes still use traditional Title V septic systems. These systems were designed decades ago to prevent bacteria from reaching groundwater, but they do not remove nitrogen. That means even perfectly functioning systems can still release large amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus into the surrounding soil. Over time, that wastewater seeps into ponds, drinking water, and estuaries. To address this, towns are now pushing for nitrogen-reducing septic upgrades. These systems use advanced filters, biological reactors, or specialized tanks to remove a much higher percentage of nitrogen before wastewater enters the ground. In some cases, the reduction is 70 to 90%, compared to almost zero nitrogen removal in older systems. Some communities are also exploring initiative alternative systems, which use oxygen injection, engineered wetlands, or specialized bacteria to break down nutrients even more effectively. Cluster systems, shared neighborhood scale systems, are also becoming more common as a middle ground between individual septic systems and full sewer expansion. These upgrades are expensive. But the reason this work matters is because septic pollution is happening underground, silently 24/7. Even small leaks accumulate over decades. Upgrading these systems is one of the most direct ways to protect ponds, estuaries, and drinking water across the Cape.
Director and now an environmental project specialist at the Test Center.
Well, Mastec was actually developed in response to the need for removing nitrogen from the wastewater. So we looked at a bunch of technologies from all over the United States and course, a lot of the information was developed outside of our area. There was a little skepticism whether our climate was the same as where that came from. So we developed MassTech as a testing or proving ground for new technologies, and also for a place where somebody could do research and develop their own products relative to removal of different contaminants, focusing originally on nitrogen.
Obviously, when it comes to wastewater, most people think of big sewer pipe, but in a lot of places that's not really a feasible option. So alternative septic systems sort of fill a little niche where the sewer isn't an option, but you still need to be able to treat wastewater to a better standard than a standard type of a septic system. So that's why we do the research we do here to both ensure that the technologies that are out in the market are capable of doing what they say they can do, and also to provide a place where folks can come with their ideas and actually test them out. And see, what can be developed, where the next silver bullet in wastewater is going to come from.
Since the inception of MassTech, scientists and environmental experts have regularly monitored and collected.
Here's where the story takes a hopeful turn. Shellfish like oysters, quahogs, clams, and mussels are natural filtration systems. A single oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water per day. As shellfish beds feed, they remove algae, nitrogen, and particles from the water. But pollution kills shellfish, and when shellfish die off, water quality drops even faster. It's a vicious cycle. Losing shellfish also means losing a cultural and economic resource. Many families depend on shellfishing for income. Restaurants depend on it for food, and indigenous communities depend on it for tradition and identity. Wildlife suffers quietly in this crisis. Fish die-offs occur when oxygen levels crash, birds lose feeding areas as wetlands degrade, and deer drink from increasingly contaminated ponds. Marine animals also ingest toxins that move up the food chain through polluted algae and shellfish. Some species have already disappeared from places where they once thrived. Eelgrass beds, critical nurseries for fish and shellfish, are shrinking fast. As certain species decline and others become overabundant, the entire food web becomes unstable. This isn't a future worry, it's happening now. Cape Cod is seeing more frequent fish kills, declining native species, and a rise in invasive organisms that thrive in polluted water. The water quality crisis on Cape Cod has very real social consequences for specific communities. When shellfish beds close due to contamination, commercial and recreational shellfishers lose income, and aquaculture businesses face uncertainty. These closures also affect restaurants and tourism, which rely on Cape Cod's reputation for clean water and local seafood. For residents who use private wells, or even towns that use private wells, rising nitrogen levels raise concerns about long-term drinking water safety. The impacts are especially significant for Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. Waterways like Mashpee-Wakeby Pond and local rivers have long been used for fishing, gathering, and ceremony. Herring runs, in particular, are culturally and ecologically important, and their decline disrupts traditions that have existed for generations. Because of these deep cultural ties, water pollution represents not just environmental damage, but also a loss of access, history, and identity. This is why tribal nations are actively involved in restoration and herring protection efforts across the Cape.
I would like to now focus on one specific place that shows how all of these issues come together, Mashpee-Wakeby Pond. Mashpee-Wakeby is the largest freshwater lake on Cape Cod, and for generations it has been a deeply important cultural and spiritual place for the Native American community, especially the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. This pond has traditionally been used for fishing and hunting, resource gathering, meetings, and spiritual cultural ceremonies. It isn't just water, it's part of an identity and a heritage. But today, Mashpee-Wakeby is struggling. Chemical treatments are now being used to control algae and invasive weeds. While these treatments may reduce visible growth in the short term, they do not solve the underlying pollution problem. They only mask it. Water-accessible vehicles also play a major role. The engines from boats disturb the sediment at the bottom of the pond, which releases trapped nutrients back into the water, increasing the nitrogen and phosphorus amounts. They also increase fuel leakage and erosion along the shoreline. Around the pond, waterfront homes add additional pressures. Fertilizers from lawns wash directly into the lake. Older septic systems below these homes leak nitrogen into groundwater, and eventually this ends up in the pond. What makes Mashpee Wakeby especially powerful as a case study is that it shows how environmental damage is not just scientific, it's personal and cultural. When water quality declines here, it isn't just recreational loss. It is a loss of traditional access and connection for Indigenous communities. The pond represents what's at stake across the Cape: water, culture, community, all tied together. The Mashpee Wampanoag NEA are the youngest group of environmental ambassadors in the world to be researching and proposing legislation, as well as speaking nationally about environmental concerns. This group of youth travels around Indian Nation, speaking with the other tribes and activists about their specific interests and concerns in environmental conservation. This young group is based in Mashpee and focuses on the issues at home for them. The challenges of the contaminants of waterways, like those found in Mashpee Wakeby Pond, are one of the main concerns for this group. The Mashpee Wampanoag youth advocate on behalf of their relatives, their brothers and sisters in nature, the herring. The herring are another native inhabitant to this land in which we have settled upon. Historically, Wampanoags have considered herring as one of the backbones of their cultural diet. The health of the herring has been threatened and consistently decreases as we see more and more nitrogen and phosphorus pollutants seeping into the lakes like Mashpee Wakeby and contaminating hatching zones for these delicate creatures. The Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, and specifically this group of youth, consider the health of the herring to be a reflection of the health of the people and the tribe, as well as the health of our earth. Since the 1990s, the tribe has been struggling with the consequences of these contaminants affecting their way of life. This is an example of one of the laws in which Mashpee Wampanoag NEA has successfully proposed and received an approval and much support on. This policy supports the idea that animate objects such as animals and plants, and specifically the herring, are deserving of rights to exist on this earth as we do. The youth worked alongside legal education scholars as well as bar exam passing lawyers to develop this law. This law seeks to exercise animal rights and rights of nature on Indigenous territories, protecting the heron and the homelands of the Mashpee tribe. Cape Cod is also making major efforts to restore water quality through projects that work with nature instead of against it. A key focus area is estuaries, which are some of the most sensitive ecosystems on the Cape. Estuaries act like nurseries for fish, shellfish, and plant life, but they're also the first places to show damage from excess nitrogen. When estuaries collapse, the entire coastal food web suffers. To protect these areas, both government agencies and tribal nations are involved in shellfish restoration programs. Many of these efforts involve growing juvenile shellfish in hatcheries and then reintroducing them into local ponds, bays, and estuaries. This includes work done by the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, the towns across the Cape, and collaborative local programs. At the same time, scientists from Woods Hole and other research centers have expanded shellfish seeding to over 300 restoration sites across Cape Cod. These projects place young shellfish in locations where they can grow into healthy, filtering adults. The goal is simple but powerful: rebuild shellfish populations so the water can clean itself. Because a single adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water per day, removing algae, nitrogen, and suspended particles, when an entire reef or bed is restored, the filtration effect becomes enormous. But restoration isn't just about adding shellfish. These efforts are paired with long-term monitoring, tracking water quality, algae levels, and species health, so scientists can measure whether the ecosystem is actually improving. They're also combined with the habitat restoration, such as replanting eelgrass meadows, rebuilding salt marshes, and stabilizing shorelines. The most encouraging is that estuary restoration blends science, traditional ecological knowledge, community labor, and natural processes and information. It shows that when people support the ecosystem has the capacity to heal itself. From all of the many community actions and policy proposals, what outcomes have really come of this? The activism and awareness surrounding the pollution of Cape Cod waterways by means of runoff, septic leakage, and so much more have brought about change, and some of these changes we can see. Improvements to our roadways, water runoff systems, and storm drains is one of the main things that we are witnessing now. With built up traffic along major roadways on the Cape, we see how they work towards creating more environmentally friendly and collaborative infrastructure within the towns. There's constant road work around Cape Cod when you're driving around, but not to repave bumpy and pothole-riddled streets, but rather to dig up the earth underneath and replace the old with the new. New storm drains and water runoff systems are being installed all around the Cape. Specifically, when we see the passing of the $26 million bill in Mashpee aimed to improve the septic system surrounding the Mashpee-Wakeby Pond. The passing of this legislature was a massive win for the community of the Wampanoag Indigenous people as well as the residents of Cape Cod, who are also affected by these contaminations. Additionally, increased reinforcement of existing laws, such as Title V, maintain updated and proper sewage system is necessary to reach these goals. The combination of all of these aspects, not only will the people Looking ahead for Cape Cod, there is a much-needed push for stronger and more coordinated wastewater policies, as well as an increase in the shellfish reef restoration as natural filtration for the water bodies. And there is an additional debate whether, as a community, we should invest in sewer expansion or in innovative septic alternatives like the ones demonstrated in the video before. Aim for these projects and the overall concern for this environmental disaster is to protect the ecosystems of the Cape without overburdening the residents with individual costs and responsibilities for renovations. As well, the integration of Native American policies and Native American practices in our modern day policies is imperative. Additionally, we see the approval of the wastewater project benefiting the Mashpee-Wakeby Pond, which was the passing of the $26 million septic system reform bill. The vision for a cleaner Cape Cod brings about hope for clean waterways for recreational activities, including fishing, swimming, clamming, cohogging, lobster trapping, and so much more, to be enjoyed by not only the local residents, but also the indigenous population of this land. The hope for a return of the flourishing biodiversity, which would bring back healthy aquatic and land animals and healthy soil to provide support to each of these species. The return of a natural way of life is what is especially hoped for by the Native American community, with a return to safe hunting and fishing, as well as gardening and just the general use of natural resources. We look for further regulation and protection policies to benefit the environment and people as a whole.